Really, agriculture got started in Montana about the same time that the Farm Bureau got started, about 100 years ago. And think about agriculture at that time. You had a lot of people that were coming and homesteading. Their dream was to have a farm, and they had really no idea of what they were doing.
It's important to educate yourself about what's going on in the world around you, so education is key.
Working together with the Farmers Bureau, we're able to communicate the most important relevant information to our farmers and ranchers out in rural communities.
One of the very first things that I found as I started researching the Farm Bureau history was its really deep roots in being an educational organization. And that's where the first value, empowerment through education, comes from. The land-grant university system came to Montana in the 1890s with the establishment of what we now know today as Montana State University. And then later in 1914, the Smith-Lever Act established the Cooperative Extension Service. And the goal of the Extension Service, as we know it today, was similar to what it was back then. It was to bring land-grant university research and education in closest cooperation possible with the people on the land through local agricultural agents. These agents were charged with bringing university-level agricultural research and education to the farmers and ranchers. This was no small task. Let's keep in mind that in the early teens and 20s, Montana was still in the height of the homesteading era. People were still pouring into Montana to stake their claim. And these were new farmers in a new environment facing many new challenges. And in fact, in the teens, there was a survey that showed that less than 40% of north central Montana homesteaders listed farmer as their career prior to staking a claim. So that means the large majority of homesteaders were coming to the state had no previous experience as agriculturalists, and those who did were likely coming from, say, a much different climate, right? They were learning that farming in central Illinois was probably going to be vastly different than farming in eastern Montana. So there was this huge need for education and research that would adapt these new farmers and ranchers to a new system and a new environment and new technologies in agriculture that would help establish what we know today as our Montana agriculture industry.
It was very important for Extension to bring this unbiased scientific knowledge to the farmers and ranchers who for the most part were skeptical of book learning. What is that college out there in Bozeman? How are they going to solve my problems in the day-to-day in my ranch and in my farm? And therefore, that is why, the demonstration method that our extension agents used was very important. But beyond that, the person-to-person relationship, the part that an agent was planted and lived in that community, that was very, very important. This was not just, giving you a pamphlet, read from it, or just a manuscript, just read it and come back to me in 6 months. This individual was well learned, was well educated, but more importantly, was going to be there with the farmer, with the rancher in the everyday lives.
John Davis was the first agriculture agent in Teton County. Now, he was a farmer prior to taking on this job. He established his family in the Bitterroot Valley on a dairy farm for several years before he had this opportunity to take on this new position as this very new thing in agriculture known as a county extension agent, an agricultural agent. And in his first year as Teton County's first agricultural agent, Davis reported visiting 462 farmers and traveling more than 5,000 miles in his attempts to seek and share information about better farming and livestock raising practices. Now imagine that. This is in 1915. 5,000 miles in probably a Model T on rudimentary roads at best. This man was dedicated to bringing university-level education to his fellow farmers and ranchers in the state. On top of that, Davis was creating a monthly exchange list where farmers could buy and sell goods. He planned 30 educational meetings in that first year that drew almost 3,000 farmers together to study new farming methods. He was the organizer and the patron of farm demonstration work, seed plots, initiating Boys and Girls Club work, which turned into later 4-H that we know today. He organized seed plots and winter meetings and summer picnics and club organizations. And on top of that, then there were the campaigns. This was a big part of the agriculture extension services in that day, these campaigns. So we're talking the gopher eradication campaign, the alfalfa planting campaign, the blackleg vaccination campaign, a silo building campaign. These were huge, enormous, monumental efforts to improve farm productivity and viability in these rural communities on a whole new level. In that first year alone, in 1950, when John Davis was the first agriculture agent in Teton County, he noted 4,786 farmers in Teton County, half of whom had not lived in the county just 4 years before. So you can imagine he had a huge job in bringing this university-level research and education to that many farmers across such a wide territory. He found after the first couple of years of his work as an agricultural agent that he needed more of a farmer-to-farmer grassroots network. He needed help from the people on the land to share the information that he could bring to them. And this is where the Farm Bureau idea finally took root.
Low-stress cattle handling is something that everyone that's involved with agriculture should know. A lot of people like to think that cattle are dumb, but they're, we train our horses, we train our dogs. You can also train your cattle. You train your cattle to be a lot, easier moving, that they, when you get out to gather, they pick up and move, and they get their calf, which is an important thing. And all these things are part of the low-stress cattle handling. So having a workshop for, Farm Bureau members, and we open it up to the public because I think it's important that everyone should know this and have an opportunity. It worked out pretty well. We had a good turnout, and everyone said that they learned a lot and they were going to go home, and the takeaways that you can take home and you go and you use them on your operation and you find out that, this thing, it works a whole lot easier if we do it this way. Anybody that's ever worked cattle with their spouse understands that trying to keep things on a low key is probably the best thing that you can do.
In April 1917, President Woodrow Wilson announced that America would be joining the Great War, the war in Europe. And that changed things in a big way in the development of agriculture in Montana. When he made that announcement, the American people were called to two great sacrifices. One was to send our men to Europe to fight, and two was to send our food to Europe to feed the troops. There was a great campaign. Whoever could feed and clothe and outfit their troops the longest would win. So there was a great calling, especially out in farm country, that we needed the meat and wheat to win the war. In July of 1918, the farmers realized that with another drought looming, it was unlikely that they would have a harvest and therefore no income in order to buy seed to plant another crop for the next year. And they were being urged that it was their patriotic duty to continue to at least try. So that summer, County Farm Bureau leaders, the presidents of Hill, Toole, Teton, Choteau, Blaine, Phillips, and Valley County Farm Bureaus, some of these had just came into existence that year. But the leaders gathered together in a historic meeting in Havre, Montana, and they said, we've got to come up with a solution. We've got to do something. Again, it's our patriotic duty. And so what they decided to do was to put in a request to Congress to ask for a wartime emergency federal loan to farmers to buy seed, to get them through another year, to plant another crop in hopes that the rain would return and they'd be able to have a full crop the next year. And what they had to do before they could make that request to Congress was gather up data and information in order to accurately and persuasively share a true on-the-ground view of what was happening in Montana. So the farmers got together and they realized they had this network of farmer to farmer, farm to farm, peer communication through this new thing called the Farm Bureau that they could use to survey the country and get accurate data and results back. So the Farm Bureau members went out, they went farm to farm, door to door, they gathered the survey and drought information and compiled the survey results. Then they decided that they had to elect one man to take that data and information to Congress to make this request for a wartime seed loan. And that man was John Davis. John Davis did travel to Washington, D.C. He presented the facts and the survey information gathered by Farm Bureau members to Congress, and he did indeed secure an emergency seed loan from Congress to help the farmers back in Montana to plant another crop. So this was the first time that these new farmers saw that together we could do more. Together we had a powerful voice. Together we could educate not just ourselves to be better farmers and ranchers, but we could share what we know with others in Washington, D.C., in Helena, and elsewhere to affect change that would set them on a more prosperous path.
Here in Park County, we've done a few things to help outreach, mainly around water here the last couple of years. It's been pretty big topic. You know, in June, when everything was just going to heck with the temperature, no rain, temperatures out of control, wind, grass wasn't growing, we realized we really had to do something, and we were in a bad spot. And I started calling around, asking all these questions, and just one of those deals all of a sudden is like, well, gosh, everybody has these same questions. So reached out to the FSA agencies or some of our local people, feed stores and reps, and you know, everybody was on board, and it was great. We had a great turnout. A lot of people showed up, and you know, we really got some good information out there, and hopefully we helped some people.
About 5 years ago, Montana meat processors approached us about developing a labor force for their industry. It's a industry that lacks labor in Montana, and they were looking at ways to establish a labor force, and they came to a community college thinking it would be a great fit for a community college, which it was. And one of the things with meat processing, it is a very expensive program to get started, and at that time, 5 years ago, we did not have the funds available to get a program started. Farm Bureau said, okay, we know Montana's getting CARES Act money. Let's see if we can get some money to help develop a program for the meat processors to get a labor force going, which led to a development of Miles Community College meat processing program. We now have students enrolled in the program. We have a coordinator, Tina Sackman, who does finding internships for the students. So they actually do internships in the meat processing plants across the state of Montana. Farm Bureau plays an important role in educating producers across the state.
That relationship between the land-grant university and the nonpartisan advocacy that it's promoted by the Farmers Bureau is absolutely essential.
We have to stick around. You can continue to do it the way that Grandpa and Great-Grandpa did it, but the times always change, and you need to change with them, or you get left behind. The more that you know, the better you are to handle what this business throws at you.
we got to be on top of every little thing to make sure that we're making the right decisions.